Dr. Anderson, do we have someone here to help us with the Pledge of Allegiance tonight?
Stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent.
Thank you for that. We appreciate your help in getting our meeting started. Our next part of our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Do I have any motions?
Madam President, I move the board approve the agenda as presented.
Do I have a second for that motion? Dr. Bonebrake? I believe we're ready for the vote. Board members, may vote by hand. Aye. This is the best part. We get to hear about all the wonderful things happening in our district, and we have the best cheerleader possible to give us that information. Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Please give us a smile.
Right. Absolutely. Well, we're going to start off with this video. So please join me so we can all smile and learning a little bit about Shania. And then
This is the best part. We get to hear about all the wonderful things happening in our district, and we have the best cheerleader possible to give us that information. Thank you, Dr. Anderson.
There we go.
it is such a great part that it had to be repeated twice. Absolutely. All right, we're going to start the video and then we'll turn it over to the Cap City family.
My name's Shania Padman. I'm a senior at Capital City High. When I first got here, I was like a little bit timid. Like I didn't really like anybody here. I was a little nervous. I didn't really trust anybody, but now I feel comfortable. I like it here. A lot of people have helped me out.
What made Shania stand out to me was that she was so motivated. She wants to change the trajectory of her family. She wants to have a job. She wants to go to college. She is 100% deserving of the work she's put in, and because she's put it in, she'll be successful.
She was always focused on her schoolwork. She always did what I asked of her. She is calm and focused. She always loves to be writing something, so she likes to stay busy. I feel like Shania kind of tries to stick up for the little people. She does like anti-bullying stuff. She just wants what's right.
She latched on to our school resource officers, and watching the dynamic, how they've just kind of adopted her as their own. She's got her own little sign that says she's like a deputy officer, just being in that office and watching that relationship unfold.
For school, I want to do like a psychology. TCOC was like a good way where I can know the ins and out of what a police officer does and how they cooperate. At first, I want to be a police officer, but I really want to be like a psychologist.
Seeing Shania grow has been one of those experiences that we want to see in kids. Like, we love to watch kids grow. For her, it's Washburn. We're excited to hold her hand to get there. We'll still be here for her when she has those questions. So being able to guide her through that, it's going to be an exciting journey for her.
We are excited to announce that you have been selected as Senior of the Year for February. Congratulations, Capital City. So excited to honor you with your nomination. We have watched since I've been here. It's changed my ways, and I've gotten help with myself. People have helped me out, so I so I can be better for myself.
Well, congratulations. We are super proud of you.
Thank you.
And we look forward to continue to work with you, obviously, because we're not done yet, right?
Nope.
Done yet.
Oh,
All right, Shania. Ms. McCoy, is there anything that you'd like to start us off with before we turn it over to the board to ask some questions?
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Anderson and members of the board. First of all, happy Groundhog Day. I don't know if you got to hear that today from anybody at the high school level, so let me be the first one. Happy Groundhog Day. I am so honored to be able to introduce to you Shania Patman. Shania came to us from Florida. And so when she got here, it was right during COVID. And so she didn't really have the opportunity. She came into an empty building, really, because that's where we were. And so she was able to quickly worm her way right into our hearts. You can tell by the number of staff that I have here to support her today. Just kind of the impact that, we're supposed to have on her, but look at the impact she has on us. And that's what it's about. So I want to introduce to you Capital City's honored guest tonight, our February Senior of the Month, Shania Patman.
Board members may have a question or two, and that'll help you kind of guide what you might want to talk about. We'll turn it over to Madam President.
Do I have any board members? Oh, I do. Look at all the people that want to talk to you. Mr. Tatum.
Thank you, Madam President. Shania, good evening.
hello.
We are glad that you are here in Kansas. I love Florida, but glad that you are here with us at the Topeka Public Schools. Couple of questions. Number one, you said in the video that you were very interested initially in going into law enforcement, but then you kind of veered a bit and got really interested in psychology.
Mhm.
And there are linkages between the two, but I wanted to ask you, what made you interested in law enforcement, and then later on, what made you more interested in psychology?
Well, I really only got into law enforcement because I like Criminal Minds, but I actually want to do psychology because I wanted to know what caused people to veer off to the left. I just wanted to know what made a person go to the point where he was a good person to the point where he wanted to start killing people, I guess. I just wanted to know.
That's awesome.
That's pretty much it.
And I can relate because when I was an undergraduate, my bachelor's degree was in psychology. So for the same reasons why you that you just articulated and why you chose it. So the second thing I wanted to ask you real quick is I've noticed there's an Avengers motif. Are you a big Avengers fan?
Yep.
All right. I knew I liked you. So tell me, who is your favorite Avenger?
Steve Rogers.
Mine too. All right. You and I are like, man, we are right tracking together. Thank you, Shania, and keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Dr. Schumacher.
Yes, congratulations, Shania. I kind of related to Mr. Tatum's question, but in the video it talked about you wanting to change your trajectory and your family's trajectory, and I'm just interested in where that drive came from, or can you pinpoint it or not?
I don't think I can, to be honest. I don't know. I just wanted to be different from myself, and I see how my family is like struggling and everything. I want to help my family out, try to educate not myself, but like people that's been in my situation. I just want to let them know, like, you can succeed no matter what your background or your life is. You can succeed in life no matter what. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of people in the audience that believe that about you and the other kids that go to Capital City. So we appreciate that so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Dr. Bonebrake.
Shania, very impressive. Bring your cheerleaders along with you. This is 3 times more than we usually see. But I wonder where you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years. What are you going to do immediately after graduation?
She told me not to say this, but I am going. I am planning on going to Washburn University for psychology and film. Oh, psychology and film.
She wants to go to film school, and I said Topeka is probably not your film school place, but
Yeah,
that psychology is what's gonna get her.
and film.
And film.
Miss Shania, do you happen to have any family here tonight that you'd like to introduce?
My little brother Jamarius and my mom's best friend Anna.
Oh, please stand. Thank you for introducing them. And also would staff from Capital City please stand up so we can thank you for all your efforts and all that you put into this young lady. We know we have great staff, but when we see someone like you that have said that you've changed your whole life because of school and the people around you, we celebrate you and we celebrate the people that have lifted you up. So congratulations. And it looks to me like you have a present down there. So maybe
Wanted to
your
open it?
principal might want to show you what's happening there.
There's a bunch of film in there.
Of course. Okay. Oh, it's a book with my name on it.
Hold it up.
Like my writing or something?
Your journal?
Is it a journal? People.
Alright.
What's my name on it? Oh, sick. It's a Washburn University, was it a hoodie from Washburn University?
The thing in there.
There is?
Mhm.
Oh, God.
The camera.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
You better show us the potato.
It's a Captain America mug. Yeah.
Wow.
We couldn't be more proud of your future plans and more proud of the teachers and staff that help you get there. So thank you for coming tonight and sharing all your plans for us. This is what our school board does, is we look for success in our students. So thank you for showing us. It's out there all the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Shania, if you hang around for about 5 minutes after the next two awards, then we'll be taking a break in about 5 minutes to get a photo with you and the entire Cap City family that wants to join in that picture with our school board. On the screen, everybody that's watching the video now sees your certificate that I just handed you, naming you as February Senior of the Month. Again, congratulations.
Thank you.
Every year, we have our Living the Dream Award recipients. And this evening, we will be turning the podium over to Reverend Williams because he will be announcing for the first time who the winner is of the contest for the food drive. So it just says food drive on here. So until tonight, others have been kind of wondering where they stacked up with all the schools. So we'll turn it over to Reverend Williams. And as the meeting was starting, all the names for all the award recipients and scholarship recipients continue to play for those that have been watching that. I'll turn it over to Reverend Williams.
Oh, happy Groundhog Day. I have been greeting people. Actually, I started yesterday. I was saying happy Groundhog Day Eve. Dr. Anderson, Mr. Robbins, Mrs. Wallace, President Bowley, Vice President Stuart Campbell, and the rest of the board of the best school district in America,
Oh, yeah.
USD 501. And to all of the other members of 501 family, it's so nice to be home. And thank you for the opportunity. As Dr. Anderson stated, on January the 14th, we had our annual MLK banquet. And part of that evening's events is recognized in community award recipients. And we have with us this evening, I just want to acknowledge her, Ms. Mallory Jacobs, who is a counselor over at Whitson, correct? Okay. And she was the recipient of the elementary category for Vivian Scales, who was one of the original plaintiffs of Brown v. Board. I was hoping that Leosha would be here, but she's not, so I'll move on. The other reason I'm here is to recognize the school that collected the most food items for our annual MLK food drive. And I do appreciate, and I'm on behalf of Living the Dream Board, to our partnership with Topeka Public Schools, because food insecurity or food poverty, however you want to title, is still present in not only in our community, but all across this country. In fact, in some areas, it's actually increased. And so, but I'm pleased to say this year, and my goal, you know, Dr. King had a dream, I got a goal, is each year to increase. And this year we increased our total by almost 1,000. Grand total was 6,766. Next year, my goal is for every student in 501, I want a food item collected. So at this time, I would like to ask Ms. Pierce to come forward. She is the principal of Whitson Elementary. Last year, they came in second. And so this year, let me present this plaque. This is our traveling plaque. And Carter had won it 2 years in a row. And so Whitson got together and outdid them this year. They had a goal. I think they collected somewhere 2,400 roughly, plus or minus. So on behalf of the members of the Board of Directors of Living the Dream and also Topeka Public Schools, present to you this plaque. And also certificate for participating.
Thank you.
So you've
Thank you. very
got a lot of pressure on you.
much.
1 can per student. Okay.
We gotta keep it up. I do have something I want to share real quick if I can. We had a student that's in our 4th grade class that just had a birthday. And instead of asking for presents, he asked for money. So he could go purchase food cans for our food drive. And he brought in well over enough to feed a family for a month. And
That's what it's about.
just amazing and selfless and exactly what we teach. So anyways, I wanted to recognize him. His name is Asher Harris. He's actually new to Topeka Public Schools and Whitson this year, and just exemplifies what we were trying to do. And many, many, many other kids, as you can see, because we met our goal. Thank you.
Should I field questions or? Any questions?
Yes, do I have any questions on the board tonight? For Reverend Williams? Yes, Mr. Munoz.
Reverend Wynn, would you tell us, I imagine that you have lots of individuals applying for scholarships. What are those key characteristics that your organization is looking for when it comes to identifying and selecting individuals who are awarded scholarships?
Primarily giving back, to put it as concise as I can. Academics excellence is part of it, but giving back not only in your school, but also in the community. Because that's what Dr. King was all about.
So Stuart Campbell.
It is good to see you.
Likewise.
Can you tell us about your involvement with this Living the Dream, how it got going? I'm curious.
It's been around since 1985 and I'm getting ready to age myself. I got on board in 1987. So
Mhm.
you do the math because I don't want to embarrass myself. We've been around for about 38 years. So we plan on hopefully being around a few more.
Well, thank you for your continued service.
Well, I'm a Dr. King disciple. So thank you.
Or Reverend Williams, would you please relay a message from all of us of thanking all those people on your board that have distributed scholarships to our students for so many years? It is just such a wonderful thing that they do for our students, giving them that opportunity and planning for their future. And you have been very generous to our students. And I know it's been their talent, they're filling out the paperwork, their artwork, but the recognition of your organization is very much appreciated. Thank you.
Can I speak real quickly to that?
Yes, you may.
This year, we had a total of 50-something applicants. We gave out $32,000 worth of scholarships, which was the highest that we've ever done. So, and what made me more proud was most of them from 501. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, with that, as you mentioned, art and receiving that, again, we thank Reverend Williams for acknowledging our young people in all many areas. But behind us, you'll see artwork on the wall. You'll see portraits from a variety of schools. And that is in part because we're celebrating Black History Month. And as we celebrate Black History Month, we're going to have our proclamation read by Mr. Cates. He's a teacher at Robinson Middle School, a social studies teacher. He's also on the Equity Council, and he has been instrumental in selecting the African-American curriculum materials that we currently use. He is an advocate for justice, and we're excited to have him here this evening. Mr. Cates.
Good evening. Proclamation. Whereas during Black History Month, we celebrate the many achievements and contributions made by African Americans to our economic, cultural, spiritual, and political development. And whereas in 1915, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, noted Black scholar and son of former slaves, founded the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And whereas Dr. Woodson initiated Black History Week, February 12, 1926. And for many years, the second week of February, chosen so as to coincide with the birthdays of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. And whereas in 1976, as a part of the nation's bicentennial, Black History Week was expanded and became established as Black History Month, and is now celebrated all over North America. And whereas we are thankful for the countless contributions of African Americans to the state of Kansas and throughout the nation this month and throughout the year. We urge our community to celebrate the heritage and continue to fight for equality and opportunity for all. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education of Unified School District number 501, Topeka, Kansas, does proclaim February 2023 as Black History Month.
It is done. We plan to do that. We thank you for uplifting our citizens with true history in our schools. Many states aren't doing this at this time, so we really appreciate your efforts in shining the light on Americans and the history that goes along with that, and we appreciate that. So thank you for all your efforts in Topeka Public Schools.
Yep. And I also want to add, just real quick, today I was talking with several students, and they were they're going through, and this is of course 8th grade, and they're preparing for their freshman year, their freshman classes and their high school classes. And one student was going through the book, and he said to me, "Mr. Cates, I can't believe that there are this many elective history classes that you could take to learn a little bit more about American history." And so I want to thank you all and Dr. Anderson for your continued support of our students and really getting a deep understanding of our history, because at the end of the day, this is going to be their America that they inherited, and we need to make sure that they understand their history.
Do I have any other questions from the board members?
I have a question. So I do recall that we approved a new book, that are centered around the history of African American. What have you seen as the impact of using this new curriculum and this new material to be able to help sort of convey the deep history that individuals who are, from the African American community have here in the US?
Sure. Yeah. One of the things that this new book, and it's Black History 365, one of the things that it does is speaks directly to our students. It provides up-to-date, I say, for example, the latest edition was over the Black Lives Matter, and there's technology where the kids can download information really quickly. So it speaks directly to them. And of course, it goes all the way back to Africa. And so it really provides an in-depth understanding, not just looking, of course, at slavery. We get a chance to look at what Africa was like before the enslavement happened. And again, there's a really great author that I've been looking at. Her name is Goldie Muhammad, and she's been talking about the importance of the celebrations. And of course, we can definitely focus on slavery, and I think we need to make sure students understand about slavery. But there are so many people within the African American diaspora that did incredible, amazing things. And so just focusing on those stories and also overturning those sometimes forgotten individuals, not just here in Kansas, but also throughout the nation.
Mr. Tatum.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Kate, and thank you for the work that you're doing in this endeavor. I'm curious about the artwork. You mentioned earlier when you first began speaking a bit ago about selecting the artwork, and were you involved in the process of selection?
No, that was not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm just curious about it. I don't know if anybody else, Madam President, can speak to that. I'm just kind of curious as to the selection process. So if we have an opportunity to engage in that discussion, that would be fascinating. A lot of great artwork, and someone's already pointed out that there's obviously artwork by younger students as well as older students. So yeah, that would be wonderful to explore. But thank you for your work. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here tonight and reading that proclamation.
Thank you again.
All right. And now we have our final proclamation with the artwork. However, Mr. Reynolds selected that. He oversees fine arts, and you'll see some art from Topeka High and several other high schools, in addition to elementary and middle. And we have really just asked that we decorate the walls with colors and photos and art from our young people, and that will be up the rest of the month. So when we stop momentarily to take the photo with everyone who's come to the podium, I encourage you to take a look at what's in the back during that brief break. Our next proclamation, we are so fortunate that we have the Kansas Counselor of the Year here with us, and we're honored to have Miss Mallory Jacobs along with Dr. Grimes, who oversees counselors. So Miss Mallory Jacobs has been quite busy as Kansas Counselor of the Year for 2023. She's going to be reading our proclamation. Ms. Grimes will come up as well, because you may have questions about how many counselors do we have and what does mental health look like. So Ms. Mallory Jacobs will start with the proclamation, and as you have questions, they'll kind of tag team some of those answers about counseling and mental health. Let's give Ms. Jacobs a warm applause as she comes up. Counselor from Whitson.
Good evening. Hello, board. Thank you so much for having us. February is such a great month. I love it. And it's not just because it's my birthday, Valentine's Day, but a lot of wonderful things happen. So thank you all so much for having us this evening. And would it be okay if the other school counselors that are here stand up as well to be honored? Yes, thank you so much. Wonderful job. And also very exciting, and we had the opportunity to go last week to the Capitol and have Governor Laura Kelly also sign a proclamation. So that is also hanging in the walls of 501. So we are very proud of that as well. Proclamation of Topeka Unified School District number 501, National School Counseling Week, February 6th through the 10th. 2023. Whereas school counselors are employed in Topeka Public Schools to help students reach their full potential, and whereas school counselors are actively committed to helping students explore their abilities, strengths, interests, talents, and these traits related to their career awareness and development. And whereas school counselors help parents focus on ways to further the educational, personal, and social growth of their children. And whereas school counselors work with their teachers and other educators to help students explore their potential and set realistic goals for themselves. And whereas school counselors seek to identify and utilize community resources that enhance and complement comprehensive school counseling programs and help students become productive members of society. And whereas comprehensive developmental school counseling programs are considered an integral part of the educational process that enables all students to achieve success in schools. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the Board of Education of Unified School District number 501, Topeka, Kansas, does proclaim February 6th through the 10th, 2023 as National School Counseling Week. Thank you so much.
Now, both ladies will stay near the microphones so that we'll turn it over to Madam President on any questions you all may have.
Do I have any questions down the board?
I have a comment. Of course, you're a Valentine's Day baby, because you just like exude the love. I'm also a Valentine's Day birthday, so we're twinning,
There we
birthday
go.
twinning. Anyway, thank you so much for everything you and all of our counselors are doing for our students. We really, really appreciate you.
Any other questions? Mr. Munoz.
I'm curious, obviously there was a certain set of concerns and things we were looking at as counselors during COVID. What about as we make this pivot and this shift out of COVID? What sort of things are you working with students to help them be as successful as they can be?
Really, overall, we're still fighting, I think, a lot of anxiety, and not only from COVID, but if you look at all the school violence that's happened across the country. So we're still fighting some of those types of things. So that's been a focus. And then the world has changed, right? So how many jobs now are remote? And so there are new things happening all the time. And so preparing students for the new jobs that haven't even been created yet, it continues to be a challenge, but again, pretty exciting.
And at the elementary level too, I think helping them feel safe and know that you're not at home, but school is your home during the 8 to 4 hour. And so how we can help with that, with those anxieties, learning how to be a kid, learning how to be with 20 other kids, and really working on teamwork. And we always call it following the warrior way, showing compassion, kindness, self-awareness. And we really focus on that as well.
Dr. Grimes, could you maybe help us understand how we find the number of counselors that are needed in each of our school buildings?
Oh, that's a good question. Because it takes a pretty unique skill set. If you think of all the academics and all the social emotional learning and all the things that wrap up to make a comprehensive school, you need a counselor to wrap all those things together to be able to address all the individual needs. A lot of times we grow from within, right? So we have a lot of counselors who were teachers and develop that skill set to become into the counseling world. We've reached out to mental health agencies also who have that niche of coming in and helping social emotional needs. So it's we've managed to fill all of our positions. And so we do have those positions filled, and it's a great team that adds quite an asset to each school.
So in elementary, are there more than one counselor for every building? Or I know in high school, it goes by student numbers. So
How many counselors do we have? Can you share that?
Yeah, we have right at 50 counselors for the district. So a majority have multiple counseling. Some schools only have one counselor, but again, it does go a lot by population. as well as need. So there's a need index. So some schools need more that support, that lower number support. So we actually our ratio to counselor to student is higher than, is a better ratio than most schools in Kansas. So again, we put a great emphasis on social emotional needs in this district, and that's seen in, at least in our counseling department.
Thank you.
And you may recall, I believe our ratio is better than the national average. It was the first thing that we did in 2017, I believe, just from listening to the district staff. Increasing counselors was key and critical, and that has really paid dividends with having a system of support and a continuum of services across the district. So I believe we started at that time, maybe with middle, then we went to elementary and then high school. So we do have more counselors than most, not only than people in Kansas, but nationally, we have more counselors per pupil ratio. And it's an investment that honestly, you can't have too much of. I think even now, partnering with many agencies, we're continuing to partner for mental health services because the need is still greater than I think the services any one school district can provide. Any other questions, Madam President, before we prepare to take the break and take a photo with these all these counselors?
I think a break would be perfect so we can let some of these people go home for the evening.
And I just want to thank you all for your support. Like Dr. Anderson said, a lot of our schools follow the national average of 250 to 1 counselor, and it's not like that at every school district. So I think that that's why working in Topeka Public Schools is so wonderful and trying to recruit some more to join us. Thank you.
Counselor, Our highlights, I do want to acknowledge, some time ago, Mrs. Schmidt mentioned about the video cameras and we fixed that. And she mentioned at the time about the audio cameras and the equipment was quite delayed, almost a year. And as of tonight, Mr. Gowan has been overseeing the installation of new audio, which is why you could hear people talk when they took a step back. And it's why the items look a little different and they're a little bit more crisp. On this side and to the public. Thank you so much, Mr. Gowan, for all that you did to make us look good and sound good.
Miss Lister, do we have anybody for public comment tonight?
President.
Thank you. So my next is business by consent. Do I have a motion for adopting our business by consent?
Madam President, I move the board approve the agenda as presented.
Do I have a second for that? Ms. Stewart Campbell? We're ready for the vote.
Okay, there it is. The vote is open. Motion carries unanimously.
Nice. Okay. Sorry, I have kind of a renegade
Yeah,
mouse here.
we have kind of a renegade board agenda.
Yes,
It just approved business. by
somebody,
consent instead of adoption of the agenda.
Are we okay to proceed?
Yes.
Okay.
I thought we did adopt the agenda.
But the cursor went to the other one.
Oh,
So let's, we could do business by consent since that's the next thing anyway, since we have no public comments.
so we need to go back and do business by consent with a motion.
Yes.
Would I have that motion again, Mr. Tatum? Business by consent.
Madam President, I move the board approve the items of business by consent as presented and authorize the board president or superintendent to sign the special project and purchasing contracts for and on behalf of the board.
Do I have a second? Ms. Stewart Campbell?
Let's vote by hand so we don't. All right. Yay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
We're back on track here. So we are up to our superintendent's update.
Thank you. Dr. Gray at this time is coming to the podium to share a little update about the graduation. As you know, he puts together the packets that you receive, works with every principal to make sure the mid-year and end-of-year graduation occurs. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Gray.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anderson. Again, we want to thank everyone that came out and supported mid-year graduation. We had a lot of smiles there, a lot of fun. Students were very excited about graduating mid-year, and I believe this is our third year. I think we started during the pandemic, and so it's just have grown each year. Just to share the numbers with you of how many students graduated mid-year, it was a total of 115. We had 18 students from Topeka West. Topeka High had 32 students, 48 from Highland Park, and Hope Street had 17 students. So again, thank you for your much support. That's it.
Are there any questions related to that? While the principals are not here, we're certainly well versed to be able to share any answers to any questions you might have about mid-year before we go on to the next item.
I just have a comment. I think it's great that we do the mid-year ceremony. I was speaking with somebody who told me that this was like I don't know, 10 years ago? I don't know when she graduated, but how she graduated at semester. And she said that she, had to wait until May for the ceremony, which was fine. But she's like, oh, I wish they had that back when I graduated at semester. So that's all. I think it's great we're doing this.
That's great. Thank you, Ms. Stewart Campbell.
I'd like to thank board members who were there to congratulate the students and to our staff that made that graduation so special for those students. They were very proud of graduating, and the number of parents there to support them was pretty impressive. So thank you for making that happen for our students.
Thank you. We are excited to see our mid-year graduates move into their college and careers as we're tracking many of them, so we can give those reports to the community about what this does allow. As we transition from there and we continue to share a little bit about updates, we received a question about EL and follow up to the last board meeting. So this is an update for you about EL. You do have a packet in front of you. There are about 6 questions or so that were sent to us from a member. So this is really being used as the time to update you on EL as a board overall. And as you have questions, and if it's detailed enough where it will require, in this case, maybe 7 of our leadership team members, all of whom are here, or they're on the video, they can speak to these individual areas, but these would be items that we would ask the board, would you like an agenda item? So we give a full picture of EL in this space. I'm going to go down each one of these questions, stop for a moment. You'll see if there are additional questions. You'll see the person's name who's in the audience, since each individual took time to help compile this data. In addition to the narrative report, behind there is also 2 spreadsheets. The first one created by Ms. Curry, because one of the questions asked for this data between last week and this week. So Ms. Curry compiled that. The second spreadsheet was compiled by Mrs. Dr. Mejia, because the questions were asked about specific staff. So I think we were pulling data till about an hour before the board meeting. Is that right, Dr. Mejia? I guess about an hour before the board meeting, we were compiling these pieces. So with that, the first question was regarding the percentage of students who need EL services at each of our schools. How many certified and classified bilingual staff are employed at those schools? And Ms. Curry has added the spreadsheet. She's going to come to the microphone to speak to that spreadsheet, since this is her work that you're looking at. So you'll see a spreadsheet attached. It's the very first one. Ms. Curry, I'll turn it over to you to speak to that question.
Is it on?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. Okay, this mainly just shows the bilingual classified staff, which was what I think the big interest was in relation to the number of students and the number of English learners at each school. So this just outlines the bilingual classified staff. The bilingual certified staff, I did not address that column because I don't know for sure how many totally certified staff we have in the district that are bilingual. I do know our EL teachers, we have 23 EL teachers and 3 of them are bilingual, but that's all. So our EL teachers mainly, they use methods and training to know how to help kids that speak different languages. And we do have 34 different languages spoken in the district. So that part's important. But otherwise, I think it's pretty much self-explanatory. I don't need to go through each section on its own, but I'm open for any questions that people might have about any of these numbers.
As Ms. Curry is still at the microphone, and rather than going in full order, because that first one spoke to elementary, and Dr. Mejia will be answering a couple of those questions, but Ms. Curry also answered question 2 about the middle school. What is the percentage of students who need EL services at each of our middle schools, and how many certified and classified staff, which I believe that goes back to your spreadsheet, correct?
Correct, that's correct. Exactly. And if we're talking about bilingual staff, right now, at the middle school, we have 3. The rest of the positions are vacant. And those are our EL paras. And then, of course, we have the dual language program at Landon, which has more bilingual staff. And then the same at the high school. We also have, 1 bilingual para right now, and all the rest are vacant.
Then number 4, also, I believe addressed by, am I correct in that number 4? I'm sorry, that's Dr. Mia, the next one.
Yes.
And so we're going to go back to the front and then address the final questions and turn it over to our board members regarding other follow-up that you'd like to ask to these staff members. And I'll mention that Ms. Sharp is online with us as well. The next several questions are about Scott. So Dr. Mejia is here to share a little bit about Scott dual language. She has attached a spreadsheet for you as well. The questions related to Scott was regarding the percentage of native English speaking students versus Spanish. You'll see that very first answer it states that Scott students have a fairly even split between English and Spanish speaking students, with 55.6% native Spanish speakers are 44.4% and native English speakers. I'm not sure if I repeated that right as Mrs. Dr. Mejia comes up to the microphone. Again, on C, Scott, the question was, what percentage are magnet students and don't live in the attendance area? 72% of Scott students reside outside of the boundary area. Scott is a magnet attracting 72% of outside students as intended. The questions regarding the Spanish enrichment, Mrs. Sharp will answer that. Dr. Mejia put together the spreadsheet to answer number 4 regarding certified staff. There was a question regarding how many teachers from Spain do we currently have? And on that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Mejia to speak to, you'll see the list down below, but I'll turn it over to Dr. Mejia to speak to her spreadsheet.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Good evening, Madam President, Madam Vice President, board members. Like Dr. Anderson said, we are, pretty even with the split of languages, but I want to share though that the waiting lists at Scott are very much English heavy. So that is very exciting because, it continues to address some of the items we have talked about here. As far as the teachers from Spain, I also want to say about the magnet component. This has been an endeavor that we have intentionally worked towards because we want to make sure that the reason why Scott was founded and in the manner that it was is true to what happens. It has been a long, trajectory of shift between just neighborhood to now city. So we are very proud of that. And that has been due to, publicity, recruitment, word of mouth. And it's fantastic to see where we are at this point. The teachers from Spain, I'm missing a few, but the majority are on that list that you have at the back. We have 5 at Scott, 2 at Whitson, 1 at Landon Middle School, 3 at Topeka High, and I counted 1 at Jardine Middle School because, they're not a certified teacher, but she's a Spaniard, wife of one of the teachers. We pay $2,000 for the visiting international teachers to participate in the program in Topeka Public Schools. And a summary of the data from the list I shared is since 2019, 6 teachers completed their 4th year in TPS and returned the following year. Since 2019, 7 teachers stayed in Topeka Public Schools 1 year, and then 5 of them since 2019 are currently in their 1st year in Topeka Public Schools. If we shift to 2020 pandemic, 6 teachers completed 3 years and remain. 7 additional teachers joined Topeka Public Schools, and 5 are currently in their 1st year. 2 teachers since 2020 stayed in Topeka Public Schools for 1 year, and then 5 teachers started year 1 this school year. So I want to point out that when you look at the data in the back, we will notice that the trend is that teachers are staying longer than they used to in the past when we first implemented this and created this partnership. So that is fantastic to learn and to share with you.
Thank you, Dr. Mejia.
Okay, so there is this phenomenon that is wonderful. The Spanish teachers, they have groups like chats and whatnot, not social media, and they recruit for us and they share their experiences. And so these people are seeing their experiences, what they're allowed to do. You know, they are like the professional development they're getting in Topeka Public Schools is second to none. They tell me how what they're learning in Topeka Public Schools is incredible and how it can be, worked into what they do or have done in Spain, as well as the opportunities they have to travel because the salaries here are also very, very, they're much higher than in Spain. So this allows them to travel. I mean, these are the people who travel the most that I know, and it's amazing because they have groups and they travel and they're individuals. So they absolutely love that opportunity, growing as professionals, but also as people. So they share with others. So then they come, they see it's true, and they want to stay. The cultural piece that the Spaniards bring to our district is, I love it because, our majority is Mexican, which is amazing. But adding that Spaniard perspective, the difference in dialect, in accent, diversifies how Spanish learners or Spanish natives receive a language, not just from one point of view, but from several.
And the final question is number 6. This was addressed by, again, Ms. Wallace, Ms. Ramberg is here, Mr. Robbins, and it's what are we currently doing to incentivize bilingual staff, classified or uncertified, to come to TPS, to stay in TPS, and then there's a question about addendums. So the answer, which a combination of the 3 staff members, all international certified staff are eligible for an annual addendum listed in the professional agreement. All addendums are addressed in the negotiations process. There are 2 that are specifically dual language related, a $2,000 one for dual language educators and a $500 one for English language learner teacher addendums. The EL addendum is for EL teachers who have EL SOL endorsement or plan on file. It's not for bilingual staff. Out of 23 EL teachers in the district who are not in the DL program, 3 are bilingual. However, they all receive the $500 EL addendum. The dual language supplement of $2,000 exceeds the special education supplement of $1,500. Those are the facts provided by that team, and they also stand for questions if you all have additional questions for any members of leadership who participated in pulling this together. And let me thank all of our leadership team members here for spending time on the questions over the last week or 2.
Do I have any questions from the board? Miss Melody Stewart?
Thank you very much for, this was, I know, a lot of work to put this together, and it really gives us a snapshot of what's going on in our district with our English learners and our non-native English speakers. Okay, I have a few questions. I think my first one will go to Dr. Mejia. So our teachers from Spain, Vale. So she was talking about differences in Spanish, and yeah, sometimes my children will say vale. I'm like, okay, they just say that in Spain,
Right.
but it's great that they're exposed to Spanish from Spain, in addition to Spanish from all the other teachers we have, Mexico, El Salvador, and more, Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Yes. So with our teachers from Spain, it's great that they're staying longer. That really makes me happy. Is there a way that we can kind of weed out? Because I know we have some great teachers from Spain who want to stay.
Yes.
Like forever stay. Yes. So is there a way that we could kind of weed out those who, because I've seen it happen. I know doesn't happen very often, but like in what year I think you had 2019, we had 7 teachers who only stayed for a year. So that's $14,000, right? $2,000 per teacher, and they just stayed a year. any ideas on how we can prevent those who are just coming kind of for the adventure and then they move on, and do more to hire those who want to stay?
I wish I had a solid answer for you. We do address that in the interviews and ask them, for a at least verbal commitment. Some of the people who have come and stayed only for 1 year have left because extenuating circumstances have happened in family life, et cetera. But we don't have something that, so to speak, holds them accountable to stay. The visas are renewed yearly for the first 3 years, and then they can extend for 2 more. The good news is that we have, at least maybe 3 or 4 who are interested and in the process of renewing their visas for 2 more years. And some of those teachers want to continue the process to an H-1B work visa, and then permanent residency, citizenship. So I cannot answer that question because we can't make them, you know what I mean? So it's something that actually Mr. Robbins and I were talking about maybe yesterday, just brainstorming about what we could do as a district to either incentivize or, whatever the word might be, so that they do stay longer, minus the extenuating circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, I guess. Oh, go ahead. No, you. I don't want to dominate.
Thank you. So my question had to do with and I'm not sure exactly who is the best person to field these questions. They have to do with the table that has the yellow indicators on for the labels. On the last column, the one that's for bilingual classified staff, there are several entries on the table that say no funding provided for this position. And so my question is this, well, okay, I guess I'm making the assumption that this position, these particular positions, wherever they fall, are still important for us to maintain, even though there's no funding currently provided for that position. And then the follow-up to that would be, who made the decision that no funding would be provided for those positions? Was that a USD 501 school board decision? Or was it from a funding stream that somehow got cut off, and that's why there's no funding available for that position? Because if it's important, critical for us to fill those positions, and we have the power to do so, sounds like we really need to consider that as a board. But to my first 2 questions, again, Dr. Anderson, not sure who would be best to field those questions.
Well, we opened quite a few centers that were not EL centers at the same time. And as we were doing this, we were also realizing the enrollment numbers that had gone down significantly and weren't increasing funding at that time. So since we were in that situation, what we did is we looked at the new ones that were opening that had the really low numbers, and we decided to share an EL teacher with those. Instead of having 1 EL teacher per site, we would have them share. And then I have bilingual EL staff from my school go in. They answer the Spanish phone lines, they call parents, they do home visits and that kind of thing, until we have a system that's, more financially stabilized. But what we're doing is we were opening a lot of sites at a time when we were looking at decreased enrollment numbers. That also decreases the budget. And I hope I'm articulating that correctly.
Yeah, and the goal is to have an EL site, or at least that has been the goal, really, to have an EL site at the schools that didn't have an EL site. So I believe when Mr. Campbell started, she inquired about Robinson as one example. I'm not sure the principal's still here, and why we don't have an EL site there. So, and just one phone call to Ms. Curry to say, here's the question, can we provide that? If the population, as we're losing students, has a really small population in one place, yes, we can open a center and that teacher can serve the students at both places because the numbers were small enough. That's how we manage that. So the request of us to open additional centers or to make those services available, we certainly embrace that, being able to provide EL centers and services across the district. And we're doing it within the enrollment funding availability that we have. Mr. Robbins, is there anything else you want to add to that?
So if I understand correctly, Dr. Anderson, you're saying that even though there would otherwise, well, even though the information on the table indicates that there wasn't funding provided for a position, student needs are being met because the district has gotten creative about how to allocate personnel resources to make sure that students in a variety of different settings are being supported.
Correct. So as enrollment declined, we continued expanding EL services, and we did it by being creative with staffing and scheduling.
And we're not restricted. I mean, it says, there's no funding earmarked. For instance, if you look at Randolph, there's no funding earmarked for Randolph for an EL para. We have 9 EL students there right now. Now, if that number were to explode and decline in another school, we were free to just shift that staff around. We're not restricted at all.
Okay. Okay. Thank you both.
I got a quick question to kind of follow up to that. So you talk about shifting it around. When we look at the high schools, it looks like Highland Park has about 14.8%, where Topeka High has 8.9%, yet Highland Park is vacant. So do we have someone that's shifting over there to assist those students?
Right now, well, we had 2 positions funded for Highland Park High. And unfortunately, the last 2 people we hired just didn't show up. So, and the person who's at Topeka High has been at Topeka High for a really long time and has established really good relation. And Topeka High, they have a large number of EL, and they also have the dual language program. So we did have 2 paras at Topeka High. And when the numbers started growing at Highland Park, I shifted that funding to Highland Park. But then our paras left, and we just haven't been able to find someone to replace them.
Because it's definitely looks like our schools on the east side of town have higher percentages of ELL students, yet a lot of those are the ones that are ending up with vacancies or no ELDL staff or no ELDL staff only. So I just wondered,
I mean, it's pretty across the board. We currently don't have bilingual staff at French. We don't have bilingual staff at Landon. So it's just a matter of having a lot of vacancies and not a lot of applicants.
Do we have any creative ideas on how to?
We've really worked a lot. We've come up with some real creative ideas. I even personally went to the churches, and that I know we have, like the Catholic schools and that kind of thing, where I know we have large populations of attendees. Talked to the priests. They posted. We posted at the stores, over like by Scott, the grocery stores. We've done a lot of reaching out.
I would venture to say that if we didn't do the things we've been doing the last few years, the vacancies would be so much more than what they are. I mean, 6 years ago, I started 7 years ago. So I think 6 years ago, we actually flew to Puerto Rico and set up shop and to hire people. It's important that we do accept people from other areas. We interviewed a Ukrainian family who speaks 4 languages, English and Spanish and Russian. And so, and immediately she said, you'd be a great para. Let's get you placed. And so some of this is making sure that they're placed. And of course, the Ukrainian students are at Topeka High. So there's a natural, and it's a dual language school. So that's a natural connection of desire for that individual. But allowing people to be able to come and serve our students from wherever they want to come from, allows us to fill some of the vacancies that we have in some cases. And in some cases, they are spouses, I guess, to some of the other teachers. So, but the creativity, as was already mentioned, we will continue to look at ways to do that. The Superintendent's Advisory Council includes a dual language, Dr. Gorsuch, or Miss Gorsuch, and she's on that. So we'll be looking forward to having continued ideas flow through that from our principal base as well.
Maybe we should have asked all our graduating students at mid-year graduations who crossed the stage if any of them were dual language students and if they had work signed up for Monday.
You know what? It's funny you say that. I mean, and you say that tongue in cheek, but that there really is actually a piece. So every high school is asked to ensure 100% of their students are either in college or in a job when they leave. And to do that, we have a senior spreadsheet and we track where they're going. And if they are a student that has unique abilities, many of our students actually, I think some of our peers are high school students actually. So that is one of the strategies that we use. And it is how some of these positions are being filled. No, there's no ending to being creative, but certainly I think the creativity has led to the positions that have been filled being filled at this point.
Okay, yeah, I'm very concerned about all these vacancies. Especially, we talk about like right sizing. I look at HPC, no bilingual certified staff, no bilingual classified staff, 63 ELs, but Whitson has fewer, one of our higher performing schools, 7 bilingual certified staff and 1 bilingual classified staff. So I just see a real opportunity here to right size our bilingual staff where they're really most needed. About the recruiting new grads, I tried to get one and then she asked me about the salary and I said, well, I think it's like 14 something. I'm not sure if it's that high. If you don't have any experience and you just have your high school graduation. I said, I think it's 14 something. And this person said, oh, I've been offered more than that at Speedy Cash. So that was kind of a bummer. Don't put that in the paper, Mr. Garcia. Do not put that in. Anyway, so what do you think could help? Okay, salary is obvious for the bilingual paras. What could we as a board do to help fill these vacancies?
And that's a personnel question. So if Ms. Ramberg, between Ms. Ramberg and Mr. Robbins, since this is their department, I'll kind of defer to who they'd like to answer that. And it may very well be part of the staff, but since that's an HR recruitment question. Ms. Sharp is on related to Whitson. So for the rest of the board to have background on Whitson and how Whitson, I didn't actually read that question about Whitson as I went through and finished that report. Ms. Sharp, would you like to share how did Whitson end up with the number of staff that they have now that are bilingual?
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Good evening, members of the board. Whitson originally had the bilingual staff when they were in the dual language model. That was transitioned a few years ago into a Spanish enrichment model. And so the bilingual staff listed in the Whitson column support the Spanish enrichment track. There is one class at each grade level that has a bilingual teacher.
So when the dual language conversation, the year I started, there was quite the contentious conversation about dual language and where should it be and should it be at one school? And they had concluded the conversation when I started, but did ask, is there some way I can further look at that since it concluded with, it didn't conclude with all people feeling as though matters were fully addressed. So what I shared is one way to address that is to have one Gomez and Gomez building. And the other building that was Gomez, which was Whitson, to allow for that to be Spanish enrichment, possibly with the teachers who wanted to stay at Whitson, to be allowed to stay, but they had to become classroom teachers, as opposed to dual language teachers. They had to be regular classroom teachers. And I believe they had one teacher more than, they had one teacher that then kind of rotated, who has since resigned. So what I shared with, I think you all in one board meeting, as well as with Whitson and Ms. Sharp, rather than filling that one teacher who resigned, who was, students were coming to her for classes as well, rather than filling that permanently, allowing the board to have some discussion. Do they want us to allow that to be filled? The principal would very much like it to be filled, and there are parents that don't necessarily want dual language, but they would like some level of a language introduced at the elementary. So rather than filling that, we've left that vacant and removed that posting. I think I've said that and captured that right, Ms. Renberg. And again, Ms. Renberg will come forward and address any other personnel questions. But so for you to know historical context as it relates to why they have staff now that predates me, and they're still there, and were allowed to remain at the building that they chose to come to. Likewise, if we hire someone and they're offered a contract and they say, I really want to go back to the school McClure that I taught at or went to school at, and they happen to be bilingual, we normally don't say, no, because you're bilingual, you can't go to that school, because we will lose that teacher. We allow them some level of preference, particularly when they're interviewed by multiple schools. We don't force them to go to a place because we know we need the staff across the district in all areas, sped, gen ed, dual language. Mr. Robbins or Ms. Ramberg, are there items that you want to add to that?
Well, just to piggyback on your last comment, Dr. Anderson, and I think it's true across the board. It's not just EL pairs, it's pairs, period. That is a challenge in us trying to hire and staff our buildings. If you look at the recent history when it comes to pairs, we have adjusted those salaries twice in the past 2 years. It has improved our ability to attract staff, but it hasn't improved it to the point that we are able to fill every vacancy that we have, whether we're talking about a regular para, whether we're talking about a sped para or an EL para. It remains to be a challenge.
Mr. Robbins, are you fine with Ms. Ramberg coming to the microphone? So if there are any other personnel questions, you can tag team.
Yes, ma'am.
The hope is the boots to the ground folks that are doing the work are most suited to answer questions that are really specific to their area, because they do the day in, day out struggle with getting paras or struggle with hiring and someone not showing up. That's their work that they do every day.
Well, what percentage of our population needs EL support? Is it
I
like,
believe that may have been a question within here for Ms. Curry and Dr. Mejia. What percentage, and it might not be in here, they might have just put the rote numbers. What percentage of the population needs EL support? Ms. Curry, do you, I'm not sure if that's one of your answers or on the spreadsheet.
So you're asking about what percentage are
yeah,
about 10%?
That's what I thought,
Mhm.
about 10%. Okay, so 1 in 10 of our students would really benefit from
I would
from the
consider
EL
them,
bilingual para.
yes, I would, yeah, and I would anticipate not all 10% would be considered active English learners. Some of them could be exempt. They chose not to get services, or some may be in the transitional phase or a monitor phase.
Yeah.
But 10% is the overall number of students who qualify for English learning services.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Well, I'm wondering, so I guess Ms. Ramberg, are you, when someone like turns down a position, be it bilingual EL para or any para, like what reasons do they give? So it sounds like this is really, I mean, I know across the board, paras and teachers, we have.
Usually the reason is because there's somebody else out there offering more money. It's usually probably not as intensive as the position of a para being in the classroom serving the kids. It's along the lines of a lot of the fast food places. We do regular reviews of salaries, as Mr. Robbins mentioned. Compensation has been changed for our paras, all our paras, twice. We look at it pretty regularly because we want to stay competitive. And try and get them in there. One of the things I think you asked kind of how do we incentivize? We don't really do that, but we do really watch our substitutes. When they come in, if they show that they have skills such as being bilingual, or they have maybe a college degree, but not a teaching degree, we certainly approach them about employment with the district in either going to a transition to teaching program or working as a para. And our bonus that we throw out to them is, as a substitute, you don't get benefits. And so we can kind of talk to them about some of the benefits that we offer. We do try hard to work, you know, with the competition that we have. Mr. Robbins does an excellent job of, you know, working to try and give as much salary money as possible. And we do review what the other districts are paying on a regular basis as well. But it's a challenge out there.
I do have a question. So we do have some schools that don't have an instructor there or a para there. I know we're probably addressing that somehow, Ms. Curry. How are we addressing our students that are needing EL but don't have any staff in their building?
Well, we make sure that every student that needs EL services is getting EL services. Every 100% that qualify for services are getting them. We have, like for instance, Randolph and Williams, we have one teacher splitting her time. She doesn't do 50 days. She'll do like, 3 full days 1 week, 2 full days the next, so that she's really there for them. And if you're talking about bilingual, like paras, to reach out, I have 2 people at the EL office that are assigned to each school. They answer, they have a Spanish line that comes directly to our office so that we have people answering that phone if the parents need anything, if there's an emergency. Like right now, we're doing CALPA testing. So I have them actually assigned at those schools full-time until that CALPA window closes to make sure that they get that done in a timely basis so they're not missing a lot of instruction. There's not a student in this district that qualifies for EL services that is not getting them.
Thank you for that. I knew you would have a great answer for that. We don't let our students down, do we?
No, we don't.
I just want to congratulate Scott. That's amazing. 72% are outside of the attendance area, and there's a waiting list for native English speakers. That is, wow. Felicidades. Which makes me think about Williams. This is off topic, but I'm thinking of our other magnet, which is also an amazing magnet, but I know it's not attracting students from outside the attendance area, and I don't know why. So that's another topic. How can we help Williams accomplish what Scott's managed to accomplish with its magnet theme?
And I would encourage us, if we're wanting to have a presentation on magnets, which we have several magnets, Williams and others, that, as we schedule that out, perhaps for one of the future board meetings, that'll give the full team time without, rushing over a week or two to really pull that data. And then it'll give the principals a chance to come and shine a light on what they're doing. And also it'll give you a chance to look at data, because one would have assumed that Scott's data is not what it is. What we see is, nope, they really are attracting people, and people are staying at least the last couple of years, few years. And so if the board decides in your board comments that you would like something as an agenda topic in the future, and you have that number of questions, we are happy to speak to that and prepare accordingly. I will say on the Mr. Robbins' end, as we think about all of our positions and with Mrs. Ramberg as well, and we've tried everything from a temp agency to on parent conference, we'll have hiring fair for our bilingual families and all of our families. And so we'll continue to do those. We started a couple of years ago, our Spanish social media site. So there are a variety of things we're doing, but all of our positions that are classified are a challenge to fill. Am I correct? Or a majority of them, which could be food and nutrition, custodial. We think about the health issues we're facing. Is that fair to say paras who are not bilingual? And there are perhaps far more vacancies in that area. So just, as you think broad and big picture, the classified area in general, particularly when people, particularly when individuals are seeking opportunity and, and they are trying to get a certain, they're seeking opportunity and they don't have an advanced degree. And this is what we tell our students. If they don't go to college and they don't have a CTE or industry credential, you really are kind of confined to certain kinds of roles. But the number of people accepting those jobs, not only in Topeka Public Schools, but if you drive down the street, you'll see a ton of employees wanted signs. And we're no different than that, but that's all of our areas. So as we talk about this one area, put it in context of the larger picture as well. Would I be speaking correctly to that, Mr. Robbins?
You're absolutely right, Dr. Anderson. It's been a challenge up and down the board as far as classified staff. And I think that is a challenge for most businesses within our community. As you said, everyone is hiring. What we try to do is help people to understand that, for the few pennies that you might be able to get more per hour by going to a fast food restaurant or whatever to work, we more than compensate for that, because if you come to work for Topeka Public Schools, not only do you have a very livable wage, but you also have the opportunity to have a benefit package that is second to none, which you would not have at some of these other locations. You also, because of being associated with Topeka Public Schools, you have a built-in retirement system, which many organizations no longer offer. You're on your own. So there's a lot of other benefits that come along with that employment. If you take the time to really analyze and look past what that hourly wage is, even though our hourly wage is very competitive. Yeah.
So think about bus drivers. Mr. Tatum, you mentioned that last meeting, and again, the shortage of bus drivers. And again, you can take that and look at all areas, which we have a continued challenge, much like many schools across the nation.
Thank you. I want to thank all the staff that supported this information and your time in bringing this to us. And congratulations to Scott for fulfilling the dream that was really set out for. And we appreciate that information, that we truly do have a dual language program that is outstanding. So thank you for that. So now we get to move on to some really fun stuff. Are you ready? We're going into our policy review. So Ms. Schmidt is going to review the policies that we looked at, and we look at it, discuss it this week, and we will vote on those changes next week or next meeting.
So I believe everyone got a packet. It's also attached to the agenda. Ms. Whiteman does an excellent job of being very concise on the changes and always submits that on the top. So policy 1031 speaks to the officers of the board, and the edits that we made on that are clarifying the election of board officers shall be at the first meeting in the January after the second Monday in January. And KSA 72-1133 requires the election of board officers to occur at that first meeting of the Board of Education on or after the second Monday in January of each year. So that is why we were having to clarify that language within that policy. The next one was policy 1036 on public participation. Currently, our policy reads that there is a 3-minute time limit, and we are amending that to 3 to 5 minutes to give just a little bit of flexibility there. Our current policy language limits patrons to one appearance, and the recommended edits add per meeting to clarify one appearance. And then there were some other edits that were made to that policy just for clarification. The third policy we reviewed was 1050 compensation of board members. KSA 721137 requires that board members may not receive any compensation as a board member. So our edits are just clarifying that statutory language and address the Baker case law decision, which is in Baker versus USD 501 in 2000. The Kansas Supreme Court applied the common law doctrine of incompatibility of office and ruled the positions of a teacher as employee and board member as employer are incompatible. The next policy we reviewed was 2300 around school security. We just made some edits in that, or recommended edits that clarify the language. The title is changed to the Director of School Safety to be consistent with other school safety policies. The fifth policy we reviewed, Regulation 2300-01, requesting TPS school police or overflow officers for school activities. The edits recommended clarify current practice that all overtime is approved by the deputy superintendent. And there's some remaining edits that clarify the position title of Director of School Safety and add the term designee to offer some flexibility. The sixth was policy 2325, unauthorized persons at school. Kansas law gives school boards wide authority to control the use of school district property. And the edits we are recommending clarify that parents and employees can be asked to leave school property if they're not following building procedures. Language is also added that principals have the authority to request anyone to leave school property, and some additional edits that clarify language within that policy. The seventh policy we reviewed was a regulation 232501. Oh, that was the same one. Policy 2360, safe schools. Oh no, 232501. Sorry, authorized, unauthorized persons at school. The word security is replaced with police, and the remaining recommended edits just delete reference to stickers. Then policy 2360, safe schools. The report of violations of the weapons-free school law was changed from quarterly to an annual report, as that is what the law is requiring. And the Kansas weapon-free school statutory reference is updated within that. The ninth is regulation 236001, safe schools. The word school employees is added to 3E, as the law requires all employees to promptly report the identity of any student who has committed the acts described in numbers 1 through 5. And the statutory references to the Kansas School Safety and Security Act are updated as Chapter 72 of the Kansas Statutes Annotated was recodified in 2017. The 10th one we reviewed was Form 2360-01F01, Safe Schools Notice. The form was edited to include all employees to report as per law. The 11th was Form 23601-F02, Physical Assault on Staff Member Report. The edits, it was reviewed and there were no suggested changes or edits made. And regulation 236002, safe schools, gun-free schools, the word visitor was added and the statutory reference was updated. And then behind that, if you're looking at the packet or you've printed that out, there is just red line versions that show you all the specific changes and edits that we made. So if anybody has any questions, Dr. Bonebrake.
The elections, get my tang tungled here. The election, the various members shall be elected by the board annually at the first meeting in January after the second Monday in January. Why don't you just say elected annually at the second meeting in January?
You can clarify if I speak incorrectly, Ms. Whiteman, but I think that has to do with not every school board meets at the same consistency or the same day of the week. And so they're just being a little bit specific about when that is.
This isn't just 501.
No, that's a KSA regulation. So that's a state. The state is setting that forth, and we're adopting it for Topeka Public Schools.
I think we say January once too often.
I'll let you take it up with the state. I don't know what to tell you. There's a lot of things I question about what they do, but you know.
Any other questions? Mr. Munoz?
I have a question about the 3 minutes to 5 minutes. Is it still the intention or sort of understanding of the policy committee to have the limit at 3 minutes, but allow us to have flexibility to go up to potentially 5 minutes? Okay.
Yeah, our thought was kind of, a lot of times we start a timer, people get up there, they're doing introductions, telling you a little bit about their background, and they've already gone through a minute and a half of their time. So we're going to notify them, Madam President will, when they've hit that 3 minute mark, and advise them that they have a couple minutes, about 2 minutes left to kind of summarize. We imagine most people won't use that entire 2 minutes, but at least it gives them the opportunity to kind of wrap up their thoughts.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Schmidt. You did a really nice job rolling that out for us. And thank you to the policy committee that sit down and really look at these policies for us, and Ms. Whiteman for doing such an excellent job on them. Thank you. So now we move to, remember, we will be voting on to approve those at our next board meeting. Yes, I believe we're up to committee reports. So we will start with Mr. Tatum and go that way.
Wow. Thank you, Madam President, starting in the middle and moving the other direction. I don't think I've been to any, I don't think any of the committees that I'm on have met since our previous board meeting, so I have nothing to report.
Dr. Schumacher.
I feel uneasy about this order. In my seat, I never have to go first or last. And I feel uneasy about that now. So we had technology committee. Mr. Gowan, our fearless leader, on the 23rd of last month. We talked about digital equity and kind of at least, and how digital equity affects our neighbors, but also how it affects our students and what's going to happen as some of the grants that we have that we're able to address some of their needs run out, and how does that transition look like? We talked about Synergy, our next student information system. There was some orientation with professional development back in January, and there's going to be more as the spring comes, with the goal is getting it ready for registration, hopefully online registration. We talked a little bit about what that looks like for the parents, and because I know that's something that Mr. Tatum had brought up before. Having students in the district, their kids in the district, the changes to those systems sometimes can be daunting from a parent standpoint. And so hopefully having a little bit of support, at the shoulder support with parents as we get moving with that. We talked about the boardroom audio. I texted my wife to see if I sounded any better. She didn't say anything. And then we talked a little bit about cybersecurity and some of the training that goes around that for our staff. We can put a lot of top secret things in place. But if I click on the wrong email, it ruins all that. So trying to keep our staff trained, and so we can keep our data safe, because that is very important. And that's it for,
Thank you. Dr. Bonebrake.
Health Committee and Finance Committee meet Tuesday and Wednesday before our next board meeting. So we haven't had a new meeting.
Thank you. Ms. Stewart Campbell.
Equity Council, we did not meet because of the mid-year graduation. However, Dr. New, she provided a link for a thought exchange for the members. It's regarding the tragic and preventable death of Mr. Nichols in Memphis. And also for Black History Month, there's a series of events which she sent to the Equity Council. And yeah, Mr. Munoz, that's right, you're on the council too. And it's coordinated by Topeka West's gifted facilitator, Ms. Steinkühler, in coordination with the Shawnee County Historical Society. And it's Zoom presentations, and it's going to be 3 Sundays in February and 1 in March. So one of the presentations is about Langston Hughes, you know, who spent time in Topeka as a child. And another one, Cheryl Brown Henderson and her perspective on the Brown v. Board decision. And then there's more. So I think what I'll do is I'll send that to Ms. Lister and she could send it to all of you, because I think that's something we could all really benefit from. Dr. Schumacher, when you were giving your tech committee report, I'm disappointed you didn't mention how sad you are that I'm no longer on tech committee. I switched with Ms. Boley, so I'm not on tech committee any longer. So it was
we had a good time.
Oh. Oh, I'm gonna crash it. I'm gonna get that.
Mr. Munoz.
Oh, hold on.
I'm sorry.
I just did want to say that instead I'm going to start on the Head Start committee. So I'll be replacing Ms. Boley for Head Start. Okay.
We have not had a finance meeting. I think that happens next week. But as Ms. Stewart Campbell mentioned, we're going to have some switches. So I will be moving from finance to policy. So Ms. Boley, I think we approved this this sort of shifting in seats. And so, and I think it's important for all of us to not to get too comfortable with the committees that we serve on, and to always be learning and always making sure that we understand the complexities that are involved with being a board member. And so Ms. Boley, obviously being on the finance, I got a greater understanding of how complex and how many strings come attached with the funding that we receive, and making sure that it goes out in a way that touches every child and every need that's out there. And there are many of them. So, but I look forward to joining Ms. Schmidt on the policy committee, and then looking at all the work that's needed to be done on our policy, and making sure that we're aware of what's happening locally and nationally, and its implications in terms of policy for us here, and making sure that we are looking forward and pushing ourselves. Other than that, I think that's all in terms of committee reports.
Thank you. Ms. Schmidt.
You all sat through all our policy committee recommended edits and changes, and that is the only committee I've met with since we last spoke. So
We did move some people to different committees by request. And so thank you for your reports to keep us all involved with what's happening. Yes.
So, Madam President, just to be clear, you and Mr. Munoz switched committees. So you'll be joining us, Dr. Bonebrake and I, on the Finance Committee. Okay, tough job keeping him in line.
Okay. I've noticed.
We're glad to have you there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm looking forward to it. I will miss some of the committees I was on. Head Start, great policy group there. So I've just been thankful to learn what I have there. So thanks. So we are on committee or board comments. And if you look at the clock, be a Miss Whiteman and condense down your thoughts. Dr. Bonebrake, go.
Mr. Tatum's article in that journal. I wonder if we shouldn't award that principal at, was it Loman that intercepted the student? Landon. Because the teacher was shot and some other people were not told and the administration did not respond. But she addressed this gunman in front of the building alone. That took a lot of courage. And the young lady that notified the administration, you know, is there some Carnegie Award for bravery or something? More national than just local. I think she deserves a lot more than a Laurel and Hardy handshake. Secondly, I'd like to know what our average absenteeism rate is. Ms. Boley and I spoke with Senator Dietrich, and she thought the September 20 date was beautiful because our number of students are declining every year. And so you get paid the next year for how many students you had the previous. So if there's a decline, you get paid for the number of students that you had the previous year. Well, I think our absenteeism rate is greater than 200. 5% absenteeism would be 600 students. If we lose 200 a year, there's 400 students that we're not getting paid for that are enrolled. So I guess I'd like to know the absenteeism rate, which I thought was over 5%.
We'll have Dr. Kipp and Ms. Wallace pull that absentee and chronic absenteeism and share that at the next meeting.
Dr. Schumacher.
I did want to make note that in our business by consent, we approved the administrative handbook that we looked at in personnel committee along with Mr. Robbins and Ms. Ramberg. And I know Ms. Whiteman had looked over that as well. So I appreciate all the work that went into that. And I don't think I really have anything else.
So one of the topics that I've been thinking about very deeply concerns equity with our East Side and Central Topeka schools. And I know that is something that several other members of our board feel very strongly about. Having visited schools recently in those geographic areas of our city, one of the concerns is our students and teachers at those schools getting equitable resources to help them be as academically competitive as the schools on the west side that are doing very, very well. And so I'd certainly like us to take a closer look at that particular issue. And especially I know we've talked about it before. I want to circle back around to exploring the idea of resurrecting the freshman academy that was at Highland Park High School, a tremendous program, did a lot of good for the students who were involved. And just if we're not doing that anymore, maybe the reasons are financial. Maybe there are some other considerations that we as a board currently aren't aware of, but I'd certainly like to begin exploring that with an eye towards, is that a program that contributes to the equity factor at Highland Park High School and in Eastern Topeka. So other than that, I think those are all the comments I have.
Ms. Schmidt.
All right, I'm going to be concise and fast. Mid-year graduation was amazing. Dr. Anderson, you always do an excellent job. I love to watch you work your magic when you stand up at that podium. Madam President, I think you did an excellent job representing the board, so thank you for that. It was fun to be involved with that and meet the students and parents. I would like to hear more about magnet schools at some board meeting in the future. I want to thank all your leadership team who are constantly answering all our questions and pulling data for us constantly. I know sometimes we have some off the cuff requests, but they always come through and we appreciate that. Mr. Gowan, I heard from my husband, audio is better, sounds great. And the new student information system, have we thought about putting up tables to walk parents through that at like parent-teacher conferences? Something where we can begin to familiarize them shoulder to shoulder, walk them through what they might be looking at. Sometimes it just helps to have somebody there to point out the things that we feel is obvious in IT when we do stuff. We're like, the shopping cart is a cart, click the cart button, and we look through things with that lens and don't always think of people who haven't worked on the application or worked towards implementing it. So just if there are some opportunities like that we can be present for parents to help familiarize them with it. That's all I got.
Mr. Munoz.
Well, it's cyclical. We've already talked about a mid-year graduation and how important it was to the students and also their families. And so thank you again to administration to put that together and for the teachers and staff that were there for that. Just to reiterate what Ms. Stewart Campbell mentioned about Black History Month and the Equity Council sharing that those Zoom meetings are going to be going on Sundays. She beat me to the punch, but that I have that on my list just to make sure people know about that. Ms. Bellew has that information if you're interested. Parent-teacher conferences are coming up next week. And so obviously all of us, those of us with the students in our are sort of gearing up for that. And I think my kids are not that nervous, but I think, it gets close to conference. They want to make sure they're performing up to what we expect of them. So yeah, just an FYI, if you didn't already know, but I'm sure every teacher and most of our parents know that. I did attend a pancake feed at Ross Elementary. So it was great to see volunteers and staff, the PTO there, along with the principal and his family member who were there. So that's great to see. I came across a parent and his student needed extra support, and he couldn't say enough good things about the paras that were there that were helping him at Ross. And so, I know having paras is difficult, and we're one of many organizations who are looking for positions to fill. But those that we do have are making a world of difference for our students. And so I just want to make sure and share that story. Those who we have at USD 501 do amazing things day in and day out, and we appreciate them. So that's my report.
Ms. Stewart Campbell.
All right, under business by consent, donations, I just want to thank Parker Price for their donation, their generous donation to Quincy Elementary, and also a donation from Martha Herrick Foundation to Topeka High School for their upcoming presentation of Amelie the Musical. So if you're looking for something to do, February 16th, 17th, and the 18th, there's a musical at Topeka High. And also, not to leave our other schools, Sister Act is going to be at Topeka West, same dates. And I looked up Highland Park and I couldn't find what's going on at Highland Park for theater. Okay, Ms. Boley and I had the pleasure this past Friday of attending professional development for board members at KASB, and it was specifically about just effective school board governance. And so, Ms. Boley, unless you had already done it, I brought this to give to Ms. Lister to make copies and just so all of the board members can see these 8 characteristics of an effective governance team. So it was really, really good training and good company with Ms. Boley. So of the 8 characteristics, one of them is being data driven, data savvy, and I know we are. That's what all this was that we requested, and so I really appreciate that. And it got me thinking about IB. Yep, I've been thinking a lot about our last board meeting, where by consent we agreed to move forward with the exploratory stage of IB and for McClure and Scott. And I just have to get this off my chest. I'm concerned that we're opening a door that may be difficult to close if we need to later on. I just want us to be very cognizant that Topeka Public Schools of not getting too charmed just by the name IB. And we just need to remember that it's a product that they're selling us, and it's an expensive product also. And our schools, McClure is one of our highest performing schools. Just to Mr. Tatum's point about focusing on equity and our attention more on our lower performing schools. So McClure, one of our higher performing schools, we could still do ASL without IB. And then Scott also is doing amazing, already has a language. There's a waiting list. I don't know why we need IB in these schools. I just really need to say that. I think as a board, we're all share a similar vision. And I know we're in the process of figuring out exactly what our goals are. But I know we are all passionate about focusing on our lower performing schools. And IB, back to these 8 characteristics, data driven, we don't have any data that it's going to help us be a destination district. We don't have any data that it's going to be a recruiting tool. So I just want us to be cognizant of that. Yep, that's all. And I just want to thank Ms. Bully for being on the policy committee meeting, and we're going to miss you there.
Yeah.
And yeah, just awesome. Last thing, echo Ms. Schmidt. You did a really wonderful job addressing our graduates, just with authenticity and just you were very inspiring. So
Thank you. Then I want to piggyback on her statement on IB. I also want us to consider what our staff and their excitement and their wanting of the program. So we need to balance that as a board to think about what Ms. Stewart Campbell said and also what our staff brought to us to ask permission to move forward with this. So weigh that as we move forward on that. I went to the Capitol building to the second part of the SPED hearings. And the committee has decided that the state doesn't have any idea what it's doing about funding SPED. So they're creating a special committee to dive into it and probably change policy. So we'll see what comes of that. Yesterday, I had the most remarkable morning and part of the afternoon at Educators Rising. And they came to this conference to compete in skills as educators for the future. I was a judge in the job interview, resume, and cover letter. And I can just tell you that these students were remarkable from all over the state of Kansas that came to compete. If they received a medal at this particular competition, they'll go to nationals. Our teacher program at TCalc, every student won a medal. And so they will be going to nationals. And there was not another club that had that many medals. So we're doing extremely wonderful things out there and bringing along educators that really want to stay with us. So, and in areas such as special education, mathematics, all over the board. So it was a very exciting day to see these young people. Brings me great hope and promise. The next thing is I would like to find a time for a retreat for the board to get our goals in place. And I'm going to ask Ms. Lister if she can send out like a Saturday morning, an evening, a board meeting night. She'll send us different things to think about and to meet as a board. So look for that email and decide when might be a best time for you, for us all to meet and set some goals. So other than that, I'm going to close our meeting if I have a motion.
I move we adjourn.
Do I have a second? Mr. Tatum?
Go ahead.